Discussing the latest findings about the many unknowns of GenX. That's what several UNCW researchers did this afternoon, just days after they delivered their final report to state lawmakers. As WWAY's Kirsten Gutierrez explains, they went over what they've been working on for several months now.
I think the most important thing that we need to know is that this is a very understudied compound.
Under House Bill 56, UNCW received $250,000 to identify and quantify GenX, a potentially cancer-causing compound discharged into the Cape Fear River from the Chemours plant in Fayetteville.
The discharge pipe is supposedly turned off, but we're still detecting GenX in the sediments. So I think the take-home is that the sediments can act as a repository for GenX and possibly other compounds like it.
Since November, these researchers have been trying to figure out how GenX is transported throughout the environment.
This type of organic compound that has been deposited in the river for a long period of time, it would be very unusual not to find them in the sediments.
So far, the highest levels of GenX in sediments were in Bladen County and Wilmington.
They're very preliminary. We may go back there in a month and find out that those sediments have shifted downstream.
While collecting samples of GenX, they found 7 additional man-made chemical compounds. At the Sweeney Water Treatment Facility, they also found several new polyfluoroalkyl chemical compounds. Compounds these researchers have yet to identify. Researchers also tested the impact GenX has on baby oysters.
Even though we exposed oysters to very high levels of GenX, we found very little accumulation of GenX in oyster tissues.
Researchers say 1 in 4 oysters exposed to 100 parts per billion of GenX died.
From the limited information we have, oysters in Cape Fear River are safe. They don't have any GenX levels, at least in appreciable levels that are relevant for ecological functions.
Researchers also discussed rainwater with the presence of GenX found on UNCW's campus.
Certainly the concentrations that we are detecting are extremely low. So in terms of being out in rain or the environment, there's absolutely no concern.
But that's not the case for everything.
I think the main concern is about what it's doing with crops. At this point, we've only analyzed 3 samples. We'll know a lot more, say, in 6 months.
In Wilmington, Kirsten Gutierrez, WWAY News.
And researchers say they have a lot of work ahead of them. As for oyster testing, the next step is to collect tissue samples from oysters that are actually in the Cape Fear River. Their funding runs until June of next year, and they hope to release another report in the coming months.